For as long as we've had economies, we've been stuck in this one central debate. Should we focus all our energy on growing the economic pie? Or should we be more focused on sharing the slices fairly? It's this tension that's really defined our politics forever. So, how do we solve it?
And traditionally, the way we think about this is that it's a trade-off, right? The conventional wisdom basically says you can have a bigger pie or you can have a more equal pie. But you can't really have both. It's always presented as this fundamental choice you have to make between efficiency and equity.
But what if that whole way of thinking is just wrong? What if we could actually have a bigger pie and fairer slices at the exact same time? Well, today we're going to dive into a framework called market equitism, which argues that, yeah, this is a totally false choice.
To really get our heads around this, let's just move past that simple two-dial model of growth versus equality. Instead, I want you to imagine we're looking at a much more sophisticated control panel for the economy, one that has 4 distinct policy dials we can tweak.
So the first dial lets us ramp up equality without touching the size of the pie at all. These are policies that just redistribute the wealth that's already there, without messing with how much stuff gets produced. Think of something like an inheritance tax that funds public services. It's basically a pure transfer.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Dial number 2. These are the golden tickets, the win-win policies. Turning this dial makes society more equal, and it grows the whole economic pie. We're boosting both fairness and efficiency at the same time. A great example is investing in early childhood education. It creates a more equal society and, down the road, a much more productive workforce. It's a win-win.
Dial number 3. Well, this represents that classic painful trade-off we were just talking about. These are policies that do achieve more fairness, but they do it at a cost. They shrink the total economy, maybe through some heavy-handed regulations that end up stifling innovation. This is exactly where most of our political debates get completely stuck.
And finally, there's dial number 4. Look, these are just the lose-lose policies. They make society poorer and more unequal. This dial should basically be switched off, and then we should probably break the knob off so no one ever touches it again.
So, we have these 4 dials. How are we supposed to use them? Well, this brings us to the core strategic insight of this whole framework, and it's all based on what's called a critical asymmetry between growth and equality.
Okay, so this is the crucial point right here. Once you shrink that economic pie, that loss of output, of value, it's gone forever. You can never get it back. But inequality, well, that's a problem you can always fix later using the right tools, specifically the ones we just saw on dials 1 and 2.
And that leads to a really clear, really powerful strategy. First, you max out dial number 2, all the win-win policies that grow the pie and increase fairness. Then, you use dial number 1 as much as you need to get to the level of equality you want, since it has no economic cost. And, this is key, you strictly, under all circumstances, avoid any policies from dials 3 and 4 that would shrink the pie.
Okay, so dials are a great metaphor, but what do these things actually look like in the real world? Let's translate this abstract model into some concrete policies.
The source material argues for what it calls a holy trinity of efficient policy. First up, Pigovian taxes. These are taxes on stuff with negative side effects, like pollution. A carbon tax is the perfect example. That's a dial #2 tool, because it discourages a harmful activity, which fixes a market failure, and the money raised can boost the economy. Then you've got your dial #1 tools, like a land value tax and a universal basic income, which are great at redistributing wealth without messing up economic incentives.
Now, to really get why some policies are better than others, let me ask you a simple question. Would you rather get a $100 gift card to one specific store or just $100 in cash? Yeah, pretty much everyone is going to take the cash, right? Because it gives you more freedom. And that simple idea actually reveals a major flaw in a lot of government programs.
And this brings us to this super important concept called dead weight loss. When you get a gift card that costs someone $100, but you only really value it at, say, $70, that $30 of value is just gone. It vanished. It's an inefficiency where value is literally destroyed. It's the economic equivalent of taking money and just setting it on fire. And this is a brilliant way to understand the problem with so many government benefits. Giving someone a subsidized apartment that they wouldn't have picked for themselves is exactly like handing them that gift card. It creates dead weight loss. A direct cash payment, though, that's like giving cash. It trusts people to make their own best choices, and it's way, way more efficient.
Okay, now take a good look at this tax table. On the left, you've got income levels. On the right, the effective tax rate.
So someone earning $12,000 a year actually gets money back from the government. That's a negative 43% tax rate. And someone earning $1 million pays a 39% effective rate. This looks like a really progressive tax system, right? I mean, the rich pay a lot, the poor get help.
Well, surprise, the math behind that super progressive-looking table is actually just a 40% flat tax on everyone, combined with a universal payment of $10,000 to every single person. It is extremely progressive in its effect, but it gets there by paying the poor, not by creating a bunch of complicated tax brackets for the rich.
What's so powerful about this whole framework is how it offers a path forward that just transcends all those old political divides. It's not about choosing between the traditional left and the traditional right. It's about finding a better way that combines the best ideas from both.
According to the source, the traditional left often falls into the trap of using Dial 3 policies. They'll shrink the pie with inefficient programs just to get more equality. Meanwhile, the right correctly sees those inefficiencies, but then they often reject Dials 1 and 2 entirely, basically ignoring the problem of inequality just to protect the pie at all costs.
So a better way forward really combines the best of both worlds. First, you let free and efficient markets do what they do best. Grow the economic pie as large as humanly possible. And then second, you use robust, efficient tools like a universal basic income to make sure everyone gets a fair slice of that giant pie. It's actually pretty similar to what we see in a lot of successful Nordic countries.
And trust me, the size of that pie really, really matters. This data here from the Luxembourg Income Study adjusts for everything: taxes, government transfers, and purchasing power. And what's just wild is that the poorest 10% of Americans have a higher absolute income than the poorest folks in many other really developed nations. Why? Because the overall American pie is just that much bigger to begin with.
And this all builds to a final, really provocative idea that might just reframe this entire debate we have around fairness and wealth.
So what if we just stop thinking in terms of taxing the rich? What if instead we reframed the whole conversation? What if we talked about paying everyone a dividend from our shared inheritance? You know, the value of our land, our natural resources, our collective progress. It completely changes the debate from one of division to one of shared prosperity. And that might just be a much more productive way to build a better economy for all of us.